That music means it's time for the 8th episode of Rookies Roundup and our first ever rapid reaction show. I'm your host, Jake Liker, aka Rookie, and it is currently 9:51 p.m. here in LA. It's our latest start yet. We promised that we were going to wait until all the games were done. There's that lightning delay in Seattle, but we hold up to our promises here at Rookies Roundup. That's how we roll, so we're starting a little late, but we promise you it'll be worth it because we have not one but two guests for you guys tonight who are going to be joining me later in the show via Skype to help me break down what we saw today in the NFL. We'll also be having some impromptu debates, so stay tuned because we might just debate about your team. Of course, we have stuff to say. You have stuff to say. Call into the show if you want to be heard at 310-922-9536. That's 310-922-9536. If you're not listening to this live, leave a comment and I'll answer any questions and respond to any statements on the next show. Of course, Rookies Roundup is part of the National Sports family on Spreaker.com, so that's where you guys can listen in. Interesting stats for you guys. We are nearing 400 total hours of broadcasting on the National Sports channel. That's huge for us. This is going to be hour number 399, so don't miss it. I mean, we've been going on for a long time. We've stayed along because we promise you everything on this show is really worth listening to. Now, on Rookies Roundup in particular, this is our 8th episode. As of a couple minutes ago, we've actually, total for our first 7 episodes, our first episode broadcasting for this show alone, and nearly 700 listeners. So that's great news. Keep listening in, though. You know, we can't keep going on unless you guys are listening. Tell everybody, share it on Facebook. You know what to do. Spread the word. For all the other great stuff we have on National Sports, too, like us on our Facebook page at National Sports. Follow us on Twitter at allcaps National Sports 1. And special shout out to the hipsters if you want to check out our Instagram page at National_Sports. And without further ado, let's start episode number 8. I'm going to bring in my two guests now. Carl Mogline is back, and we also have Ian Martin. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great, Jake. How are you doing?
I am good. You know, interestingly enough, so we've got Carl, who's from Oregon. You've got me, who's from California. We've got Ian, who's from Washington. So, West Coast represent. West Coast, best coast on our 8th episode.
Just showing up here in Seattle.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you guys have some great weather up there.
Yeah.
Carl, how's the weather for you in Oregon?
The weather is really nice, and it will be for the next, month and a half until it gets freezing cold.
Awesome, yeah. Well, we're in LA here. Well, I'm in LA, which means it's going to be perfect forever, which is awesome. But you know what else is awesome? NFL football. Week 2 action. Let's start with it. We're just going to talk about what we took away, what needs to change. So first up, let's talk about St. Louis and Atlanta. The Rams went into the Georgia Dome. Atlanta led big. The score suggests a closer game than it really was. Falcons defeated the Rams 31-24. So I'm going to start with Ian. What worked here for Atlanta? What was the big reason that they won?
Atlanta, I think the big reason they won today was Matt Ryan to Julio Jones. I mean, look at Matt Ryan's stats: 33, 43, 374 yards, 2 touchdowns. And he threw to Julio Jones, I'm not sure how, he had 11 receptions, 182 yards, and a touchdown. And he had 14 targets. That's 11 of 14. That's pretty good, especially with Julio Jones that dominant of a receiver. And then considering you don't throw to Tony Gonzalez or Roddy White pretty much at all, that's all your passing game that wins you that game.
Yeah, it's especially impressive that they're able to win this game without Steven Jackson. He got injured, left the game early on. What about you, Carl? What do you think was the big reason Atlanta won this game?
When I look at this game, I just look at the improvement of Matt Ryan over the previous game. The first game against New Orleans, he was almost completely shut down. In this game, throwing for 374 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Just a really solid game. And, especially one big play stands out to me, an 81-yard pass to Julio Jones for a touchdown. That kind of got them rolling, put them up 14-0 before they ended up going up 21-0. Just a really strong performance from Matt Ryan.
Yeah, well, the thing that stood out for me, I expected Atlanta to win this game just by a point. I thought it'd be a lot closer than it actually was. I mean, granted, it was still a one-score game, but Atlanta was up from the start. I wasn't surprised at all with what the Falcons did on offense today. We know what Matt Ryan can do when he's at home. What struck me was what St. Louis was not able to do on the ground. This was their chance. The Falcons lost Steven Jackson. They were stuck with Jaquiz Rogers and Jason Snelling, who ran for a combined total of 36 yards on the ground. This is where the Rams were supposed to win this game with Darrell Richardson, and instead Richardson was only able to get 10 carries, 35 yards. Bradford pitched in with 3 carries, 25 yards. This team did not get 70 yards on the ground. So I think I'm actually going to say, not that Atlanta won this game more than St. Louis lost it, but had St. Louis been able to produce on the ground, we might be looking at a very different final score. Shall we move on? Sure. Before we go on, actually, one more thing. So, if you listened to last night's show, I was able to make my picks. Carl was here with me for that. And today, I'm very happy to tell you guys, don't listen to me in the spread, but listen to me in straight-up picks. I have gone at 12 for 15 this week. A win tomorrow night for Cincinnati would make me 13-3, which would be a new record for me, and that's great. The reason why I got to be able to pick correctly in close games, such as Buffalo, Carolina. A lot of people were expecting the Panthers to win this one. I did call the Bills, and they did not disappoint. What a great game this was. A lot of close games this week. Ian, let's start with you. What's your reaction to this 24-23 win for Buffalo?
EJ Manuel, by far, he's the standout in this game. For me, I kind of gave EJ Manuel a new nickname, and that is Cam, because second to last play of the game, EJ Manuel running down goal line side, he just powers through one of the Panthers' defensive backs, and I haven't seen any other quarterback do that besides Cam Newton. And I think this EJ Manuel kid, he could produce some pretty big numbers with CJ Spiller and Stevie Johnson out as his targets.
Yeah, Manuel was impressive to say the least. A lot of people were scratching their heads when they picked him, but so far he's proving the critics wrong. What about you, Carl?
I really do like EJ Manuel. I personally had the Panthers winning this game, and when EJ Manuel came down and drove for the final drive and winning this game on that, I would say I was disappointed. I really thought that this Panthers team could pull it out. And when I look at this game, I look at one key mistake by the Panthers, and that was there was a 3rd and 5 late in the game. It was on the Buffalo 25, and the Panthers had the ball, and there's just under 2 minutes remaining. There was a minute 48, and instead of throwing the ball on 3rd and 5, they decided to run it and ended up settling for a field goal. And I personally think they should have just thrown the ball, tried to actually gain the first down, and let Cam do his magic, because that kind of did end up killing the entire drive and making them go for a field goal, which eventually led to them losing this game.
I'll give you a quote, Carl, that pretty much coincides with that. I'll be impressed if you can name who said it. The quote is, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." Who said that?
Wayne Gretzky.
Yes, Wayne Gretzky did. Carl, you're on a roll with this show whenever I try and give you trivia. I can't stump you. That's right, they should have gone for it. You can't just keel over like that. I think the big mistake here was obviously the penalty late in the game that erased the interception from Luke Kuechly. He's a young guy, and it's just not an excuse, though. You still cost your team the game. Don't have silly penalties. Silly penalties have hurt a lot of teams this week, especially the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but we'll get to that later. I was impressed with how Buffalo was able to be dynamic with their receiving core. Steve Johnson, 8 receptions, 111 yards. Robert Woods had 4 for 68. Spiller, 4 for 26. Jackson, 4 for 23. And there are still 4 other guys who were able to get receptions and yards with them. So they were able to maintain balance on the offensive side of the ball. Spiller didn't get into the end zone once today, but it didn't matter. Buffalo was good enough, and what you look for a young quarterback is clutch, because you can't find that on paper. E.J. Manuel proved that he can be a big-time quarterback today. But another young quarterback trying to prove that he can make it in the league is Terrell Pryor. The Jacksonville Jaguars faced off against the Oakland Raiders. Yes, this was an afternoon game, but you'll figure out why I decided to do it in this order after this. So, Raiders, Jaguars. Carl, you're up first. Rapid reaction.
This game really kind of reinforced what I already thought, was that Terrell Pryor has the ability to be an NFL quarterback. And it just shows, I mean, he didn't have an outstanding game in any means, but he ran a very solid game. His percentage on completions was less than stellar, 15 for 24, only threw for 126 yards, and ran for only 50. But the way I like the way he managed his game, and I think he proved he can be an NFL quarterback.
Well, I mean, it's easy to prove yourself when you're playing the Jaguars, but granted, he still did play as well, and give him more credit to do. Ian, what do you think?
I'd like to make a change to the NFL rulebook to have each team lose this game, because I didn't see, the only thing I saw that I liked about this game was Darren McFadden. He 19 carries, 129 yards, no touchdowns though. I didn't like anything I saw about this game. It just reminded me of how bad the Jaguars were, and Oakland Raiders still far from being good.
Ian, if you didn't like anything you saw in this game, then you clearly did not see the performance of Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson's flying tackle over a blocker to bring down Maurice Jones-Drew was absolutely incredible. That was just a feat of pure athleticism. We weren't expecting a great game here. No surprise with the final score. Oakland 19, Jacksonville 9. It was a sloppy game, yes, but I do think Oakland deserved to win because they were able to stop the run. Jacksonville's not going to have many opportunities to win this year, if you ask me, and many people would agree with that. The Jaguars had a chance in this game. Even with Chad Henne as their quarterback, all they need to do is be able to establish the run game with Maurice Jones-Drew. Jones-Drew had 10 carries for 27 yards. That is not going to get it done. Both teams combined for 15 penalties. There were only 2 touchdowns in this entire game. 19-9, not a very conventional final score for not a very conventional game. There's still a lot of room to improve, but Charles Woodson was very impressive, and MJD needs to step it up. Which brings us to our first impromptu debate. E.J. Manuel or Terrell Pryor? Who would you rather have as a franchise quarterback looking for the years to come and right now?
I don't know. I feel like he has a little more size. He can barrel over some defenders. And like I said earlier, I compare him to Cam Newton. So, E.J. Manuel.
Well, but what's so bad about being a run-first quarterback? I mean, Michael Vick was the original dual-threat quarterback in the modern-day era of football as we know it today. And just today we saw Vick throw for over 400 yards.
But also injuries have sidelined him.
That's true. So you're saying that Pryor's more injury prone?
Yeah, just like RG3.
Fair enough. Carl?
I'm gonna have to agree with Ian on this. I think
He will play in the clutch and prove himself today. It was impressive enough for me. In a thriller in Soldier Field. Carl, you're a Vikings fan. I'm sure this one hurt a lot. What's your reaction to this one?
Oh, my reaction to this one goes in phases. My first reaction is grr at I hate life. I was not exactly ecstatic as Martellus Bennett caught that 16-yard pass from Jay Cutler in the left side of the end zone. I kind of was not happy at all. This game, one, it disproved your turnover theory because the Vikings won the turnover battle 4-3 in a very I really thought that this game was over, and then it just kind of fell apart. I really almost wish that the Bears had scored a little earlier, so
The run defense. They were not able to stop Reggie Bush. Matt Forte today got 19 carries for 90 yards. Alshon Jeffrey added 2 carries and 30 yards. Cutler had a couple yards here or there. What do you think about this, Ian? Because these were two teams that are on the fence coming into the season, and we're seeing that the Vikings are 0-2 and Bears are 2-0.
Look, for me, I look at Chicago or Minnesota. I look at Minnesota and I see the Chicago Bears, but with less of a passing attack. When you look at it, they have almost the same run game. Adrian Peterson hasn't put up these huge numbers that we were supposed to see this coming year that he put up last year. Matt Forte's been just doing what he does. $39, 290 yards, and then you look at Christian Ponder, 16, that's 30 for 227. I see the same QB, and these two guys are each mobile QBs, but they're a throw first. So, I don't know. I don't take away too much from this game, except for it proves to me that they're almost the same exact team.
You mentioned you were disappointing in Adrian Peterson, but you praised Matt Forte's performance. If you look at the stat line, however, Peterson was able to get 100 yards on 26 carries, Forte 90 yards on 19 carries. So Peterson got more yards. He hasn't had the chance yet to prove himself. Because first he had to go up against the Detroit Lions, and he nearly had 100 yards in that game. He fell just short of the triple-digit mark, I believe, facing up a defensive line that consisted of Nick Fairley and Ndamukong Suh. And then he comes into Chicago, and Chicago is all about black and blue football, ground and pound. We can stop you if you try and run the ball on us. and he still was able to get 100 yards. So I can't put this on Peterson at all. I have to put this on the overall rush defense for the Vikings, but also their inability to stop Martellus Bennett. You want to look for a fantasy pickup this week, and for tight end, you look at Martellus Bennett. Today we saw him 7 receptions, 76 yards, and 2 touchdowns, all through the air. This was a triple threat of Matt Forte, Brandon Marshall, and Martellus Bennett. 11 receptions, 71 yards for Forte, 7 receptions, 113 yards, and a touchdown for Marshall, and as I said, 7 receptions, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns for Martellus Bennett. I don't care how good your running back is. You cannot give up numbers like that, especially to a subpar offense like Chicago. You're going to lose every time. When it came down to it, Chicago proved today that they were the better team.
Yeah, totally, they did.
Jake, I just want to bring up one thing, and it is about the Vikings. But I want to bring up a couple points not on what they did, but a couple of things. One, Cordarrelle Patterson, a player I really did like. I picked him as my X factor last night. He took the opening kickoff for 105-yard, I believe.
Yes.
Return. 105 yards, and that was just pure speed almost. He took a block and just ran through. Also, the play of Xavier Rhodes, the rookie corner out of Florida State, another draft pick of theirs, one of their 3 first-rounders, really impressed me. So some of these up-and-coming Vikings have really impressed me. Also, Christian Ponder really was a tale of 2 halves. His second half was miles better than his first, but it really wasn't good enough. I really think this may be Christian Ponder's last shot. I think by the end of the season, we'll see Matt Castle taking over this starting job.
I think when you look at the Minnesota Vikings, it's a very deceptive thing because the first thing you want to look at is Adrian Peterson, and the question is, what are we going to do with passing? The real concern here is clearly the defensive play, and they have to fix that if they want to win more games. 2 other teams that were looking to win some more games today, the Miami Dolphins and the Indianapolis Colts, and this was one of those games I got wrong. I warned Carr last night never to pick against Indianapolis at home. Little did I know the Miami Dolphins had different plans. They pulled out a 24-20 win and were able to stop another big run from Andrew Luck's comeback Colts to get the win in Indianapolis. The Dolphins improve to 2-0, 24-20 Miami wins. Ian, we'll start with you this time. What did you think of this game?
This really showed me a lot. I loved everything the Dolphins did today. It just blew me away. The Colts, good team. Don't get me wrong. They're a highly playoff capable team. But the Dolphins, I was kind of iffy on. I wasn't sure if they would win this game on the road at Indy against Andrew Luck. But Ryan Tannehill came out with fire. So did Mike Wallace. Last week, almost did nothing. This week, 9 receptions, 115 yards, and a touchdown. That really showed me that this team's ready to win and could do some pretty good things.
What was interesting for me to see in this game, if you look at the stats for the main players, it was really neck and neck. For quarterbacks, Tannehill went 23-34, 319 yards and a touchdown for the Dolphins. And for the Colts, Luck went 25-43, just 2 more completions for 2 more yards, 321 yards and a touchdown. On the ground, Lamar Miller, 14 carries, 69 yards and a TD. For Indianapolis, Bradshaw got 15 carries, 65 yards and a TD. T.Y. Hilton had a big day today, 6 receptions, 124 yards. But Mike Wallace got 9 receptions, 115 yards, and a touchdown. Also, interestingly enough, neither team was able to score a single point in the fourth quarter. Ian, what do you think of that? And Carl, what do you think of that?
I'm kind of shocked that neither team scored late. I mean, after halftime, Miami tacked on a touchdown. Indianapolis hit a field goal, but you just look into the fourth quarter, and once you got into the fourth quarter, it just never really went anywhere. I'm just looking at the drive summaries for Indianapolis, and they just never got out of their own territory is really what happened. They just kind of stalled almost the entire second half, and then you look, they just punched. Okay, here we go. Once you get their last 2 drives of the third quarter punt and then a punt, and then they had an interception in the fourth, and then they went, of course, out on downs. But the end of clock management was really, really nice by Miami, because Miami just completely tore through the clock as well.
You look at the receiving core for both teams, because everything was so close, and it just seems like it came down to the receivers today. The Dolphins' big receiver, Mike Wallace, had a big day. 9 receptions, 115 yards, and a touchdown. The Colts lacked a big day from their main receiver, and that's Reggie Wayne. 5 receptions, 46 yards, didn't get into the end zone. They were able to spread the receptions around, but they weren't. Charles Clay had 5 receptions for 109 yards, and Mike Wallace, 9 receptions, 115 yards, and a touchdown, plus 68 yards on 5 receptions for Brian Hartline. I think this just came down to the receiving for the Dolphins. Neither team wanted to budge in the fourth quarter. The Dolphins held strong. That's a big game in Indianapolis to win. Not many saw it coming. Miami looks like they can be a serious threat in the AFC East. Speaking of serious threats, how about the Green Bay Packers? The Packers had their home opener in the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field, where the Packers hosted RG3 and company. The Washington Redskins came into town, although the Packers made them wish they hadn't. Rodgers set a franchise-tying record for 480 yards through the air, and that's his personal career high, and 4 touchdowns. Plus, James Starks rushed for 132 yards and a touchdown, snapping a 45-game dry spell for the Packers. It's been 45 games since Green Bay had a running back rush for over 100 yards, and the last time it happened, Brandon Jackson, 45 games ago, against the Washington Redskins. Rapid reaction. Carl, you could go first this time. What do you think of this one?
I'm kind of depressed to say I picked the Redskins. I thought they would kind of leave the funk they were in the first game, but Green Bay really, really had a good game, and I think this kind of put the pat on the back of the 49ers as well. This Packers team absolutely manhandled the Washington Redskins. You look at those points, even though it was only an 18-point game, that comes with 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, 7-38. Going into the fourth quarter, RG3 kind of just padded his fantasy stats. But this game just proved that Green Bay is a force to reckon with, and that apparently Green Bay can now run the ball. I didn't know that was actually allowed. I thought it may be illegal. But apparently it's not, so that's good.
Yeah, according to the Packers, this was the first time in NFL history that any team had a 450-yard passer and a 125-yard rusher in the same game. Ian, what do you think of that?
For me, this really shows me that this Packers team, they're still one of the best teams in the NFL. I kind of had some concerns with them. Even though it's started to become a more passing league, you still have to be able to run the ball efficiently enough to open up the passing game. And like you said, this is their first 100-yard rusher in 45 games. You can't go on winning without a 100-yard rusher in 45 games. But this really showed me that if James Starks could put up similar numbers, run for, 20 carries, 90 yards even, then Aaron Rodgers, that would open up the passing game for Aaron Rodgers to put up huge numbers and have a phenomenal season.
Yeah, as a Packer fan, as a fan of any team, you learn things about certain teams and their mantras. And as a Packer fan, I've learned over the years there's something that Aaron Rodgers does. When you knock him down, he will do everything he can to get back up. And same goes for what he does to the rest of his teammates. If you sit down and watch a Packer game, if somebody drops a pass, about 75% of the time, he will throw to that same receiver on the next play to get that player to regain confidence and get some redemption. Well, that happened this week with James Jones. James Jones blanked on the scoreboard last week. No receptions, and therefore no yards. And this week, 11 receptions, 178 yards for James Jones. throwing 2 TDs for Jordy Nelson on 3 receptions, 66 yards. Randall Cobb had 9 receptions, 128 yards and a touchdown. Finley had 6 receptions, 65 yards and a touchdown. And they were able to run the ball. What was interesting for me to see, when Lacey went down early with that concussion after Brandon Merriweather had that dirty hit leading with his head, interestingly enough, a few plays later, Starks lowered his head and that ended up injuring Merriweather for the rest of the game as well. That was a little interesting dynamic there. The Packers really showed everybody that there's nothing to worry about. Aaron Rodgers has not lost back-to-back games since Brandon Jackson ran that 100-yard rushing game against the Redskins. 45 games since then, and those were 2 consecutive overtime losses by field goals against the Dolphins and then the Redskins. If the Green Bay Packers lose a game, they're very likely to win the next game, and history repeated itself today. But on the other side of things, we have to bring up our second debate. Robert Griffin III. Now, RG3, recovering from this ACL injury, still looks a little awkward, trying to lean on his back foot. He's got that bulky brace around his leg. And a lot of people are wondering, did they bring him back too soon? Would you rather have a Kirk Cousins at 100% over a 75% Robert Griffin III? Do you think they put him in too early? His play has been less than stellar lately. What do you guys think about this one? If you are Mike Shanahan, do I want Cousins or do I want Griffin? Carl, let's start with you.
Personally, this is an interesting point, but I honestly really like Kirk Cousins. I like what he's done when RG3's been out, but I think as Mike Shanahan, the issue might be here is he's already shown during the preseason him and RG3 having those issues with who was going to start. I mean, if RG3 was going to get any playing time, all that stuff. It worries me about the press, but personally, if I'm Mike Shanahan, I think I have to make the executive decision for what's best for the team. And I think what's best for the team is Kirk Cousins starting, because Kirk Cousins is a very strong quarterback that most people don't realize the strength he has, really.
Ian, what about you?
I'm going to have to agree with Carl on this. I really don't like them going with RG3 in these past 2 games. If the second overall pick, you trade up to get him, and he's set at 75%, you don't run any sort of risk to get him re-injured after this big of an injury. You know what he can do. He took you to the playoffs once. You sit him out until you know he's 100%, no matter how long it is. And I don't know, I always go with Kirk Cousins in any situation like that.
I can't stand agreement in a debate, but I have to agree with you guys here. Not because I'm so afraid that Robert Griffin III is going to get injured again, but it's that he's still technically injured. The way he's been playing, you are only hurting everybody. You are not allowing him to play at maximum capacity and being able to fulfill the need that the Washington Redskins have this season if they want to return to the playoffs. Second, there is the chance of re-injuring Robert Griffin III. Even worse, third, you're only hurting his confidence even more. If he continues to play like this, he'll begin to doubt himself. He's still a young guy. You'll have the media in his ear about maybe this is a sophomore slump. Just take him out of there. Because right now, Robert Griffin III left his talent at Subway. So he needs to turn around and go back to Subway and find it.
Jake, that's the 4th time I've heard you use that joke.
No, I texted it to you earlier. I have mentioned Robert Griffin III and Subway many times before together, but it's just a problem. It's a serious problem right now with Robert Griffin III. And Kirk Cousins seems like a good answer. I mean, there's a reason that you picked Cousins in the draft as a security blanket. This is the exact situation you're using it for. Otherwise, you have absolutely no use for Kirk Cousins. So, sadly, I do agree with you guys. Kirk Cousins should be starting next week. Now let's move on. Baltimore and Cleveland. This wasn't exactly a game that turned out the way most thought it would. Baltimore did get the win, but not in the most ideal way. Final score, Ravens 14, Browns 6. Rapid reaction, Ian, what do you think about this one?
This is pretty much what I expected. I didn't expect it to be blowout by all means. I expected it to be a fairly tight game. But what I really was surprised with was Ray Rice. He didn't put almost any numbers up. He didn't do anything to help his team. 13 carries, 36 yards. That's not doing enough to be a Pro Bowl running back or, by all means, go to the playoffs again.
He did leave in the fourth quarter early with an injury, but I agree. From what we did see, he was not good enough.
Yeah, and Joe Flacco, 22 of 33, 211 yards. I'm not sure that's even enough, and only one touchdown, even though he didn't throw an interception, which I'm pretty happy about. That's not enough for a team to go back to the playoffs.
Especially to go back and win a Super Bowl again. Carl, what do you think?
This is just a game you kind of have to win. Cleveland is not a strong team by any means, really. Trent Richardson will develop into a good running back, but right now Cleveland's just at a point where they're going to lose a lot of games and probably will end up with another very high draft pick going into next year. Just looking at this game, I think the Ravens are a better team than this, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Ravens really have dropped off from last year, losing Anquan Bolden, losing Ed Reed, losing all these big players. I don't know. Maybe this Ravens team is just so much different from last year.
I wasn't as disappointed with Baltimore as I was impressed with Cleveland. And it's a weird thing to say when you don't get into the end zone and you only score 6 points. But just hear me out here. Brandon Weeden has been an interception machine. But this time he did not throw a single interception. He went 21 of 33, 227 yards. No touchdowns, but no picks. And we have a rising star in tight end Jordan Cameron. Had a big week last week. We want to see if he could answer again, and he did. 5 receptions and 95 yards, including a long of 53 yards. I was disappointed with the way Baltimore played, and I was actually somewhat impressed by the way Cleveland played, but they have to get into the end zone. You're not going to win if you don't get into the end zone. It's as simple as that. And Cleveland's got to get that through their head, because you know what? There is potential with this team. Baltimore is dropping off. The next time these two teams meet in Cleveland, we could have a pretty interesting game. But if you really want to talk about interesting games, you have to talk about what went down between Houston and Tennessee. Let's just break down what happened at the end of this game. Houston looked down for the count, trailed by 8 with 2 minutes to go. They were able to rally back, score a touchdown, get the 2-point conversion, tied at 24. They forced Tennessee to give the ball away. Houston drives down the field, and then you have Randy Bullock coming in, a young kicker who's 0 for 2 at this point. He's missed 2 50-yard field goals. Now you have a 51-yard field goal, and you can win it and prevent it from going to the overtime. The kick's up. It's good, but Mike Munchak, head coach of the Titans, ices him, so he has to try again. Kicks up. It is blocked, but one of the players was offsides. So now it's a 46-yarder for Bullock. The kick's up. It's no good, but again Munchak called a timeout, and at his 4th try, Bullock missed the field goal. It sent it to overtime, but it did not matter. The Texans were able to again barely escape with a win, this time over the Tennessee Titans. The final score, 30-24 in overtime. DeAndre Hopkins really emerged today for the Texans when Andre Johnson went out of the game early on. 7 receptions, 117 yards, and a touchdown. A lot to digest in this game. How about Carl? You get to go first this time. What do you think of this one?
This is a game, I guess I wouldn't say I told you so, but yeah, I told you so. I told last night that Tennessee would keep this under the line. They would beat the spread, but Houston would still win. And I think I kind of proved my point here. Tennessee is a stronger team than most people give them credit for. And Houston really shouldn't take too much to notice from this. Matt Schwab threw 2 picks, which is not something I like, and his QBR was just a little lower than I like at 40. I really hope Arian Foster comes back from the Houston Texans, because if he is out, that extremely puts a huge gash in the team for all he does in the rushing and the passing game. Ben Tate coming in as a backup, 9 carries for 93 yards, so a really good performance from him, but of course 60 of those yards were on 1 carry, so I don't know how much you can really look at that. But you look at DeAndre Hopkins, 117 yards receiving, just a huge game from him. But once again, Tennessee, I was really impressed with.
Ian, what about you? What stood out to you in this one?
For me, this kind of stood out was the rushing game. I knew what I'd get out of Arian Foster, but Ben Tate, for me, was one of my X factors for this team. Last year, they could have went to the Super Bowl very easily if they had a little more of a passing game and a little more of that running game. You can't rely on Arian Foster. You can't rely on one back. But I was very happy with Ben Tate today. Carl, that 60-yard run, that proves everything. That's not many people can do that, but I don't know. I'm happy with Ben Tate. I'm happy with DeAndre Hopkins. Overall, I'm happy with this Houston game, but Tennessee plays out of their minds today. This game shouldn't have even been close.
The Texans proved something today. They showed off something that many teams in the NFL just do not have, and that was depth today. When your quarterback comes in and throws 2 interceptions, you lose the turnover battle by 2. And you're still able to come back. You still miss a field goal. You have to go into overtime. And you still win. Houston's not an easy team to knock down by any means. Arian Foster, 19 carries, 79 yards, and a touchdown. You're like, alright, well, he underperformed. Maybe there's a chance for Tennessee. And then you see Ben Tate had 9 carries, 93 yards, including a long of 60 on the receiving end of things. Andre Johnson, 8 receptions, 76 yards. He left the game early with what is being diagnosed, I believe, as a concussion. And DeAndre Hopkins. This kid, I'm on it right now. He could be the offensive rookie of the year. He's looking like a rising star in this league. 7 receptions, 117 yards, and a touchdown. A touchdown that ended up winning this game in overtime. I am over the moon with DeAndre Hopkins here. So impressive. So impressive. This was an unprecedented performance from DeAndre Hopkins, and it was really something else to see. So even when some guys aren't performing the way they need to be on Houston, this is a big statement win. Not because it was a close win, but because even when their stars aren't doing as well as they can, they know that they'll still find other ways to produce. And for Tennessee, the Titans, they're looking like a strong team now. Chris Johnson did not rush for 100 yards, but they too showed off some depth today. Kendall Wright, 7 receptions, 54 yards. On paper, it's not all that impressive, except for the fact that Jake Locker, 17 completions, 30. He went 17 for 30, 148 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This wasn't overwhelming on paper for Tennessee. The reason this was a close game, they've got 2 picks. If Tennessee can continue to force turnovers and Chris Johnson and Jake Locker, all they have to do is play good enough, the Titans have a chance. They have proved that to all of us. They were able to beat the Steelers. They almost beat the Texans. They are on the bubble here. But if you want to talk about teams who almost beat the Texans, how about the San Diego Chargers, who came into Philadelphia and really delivered a surprising statement win, 33-30. Both quarterbacks threw for over 400 yards, but it was the Bolts who finally came away with a W. This is a surprise to many, including me. What about you, Ian? Was this surprising to you?
No, not really. The past couple of years, many people have kind of forgotten about Philip Rivers and how he used to be an elite QB in the AFC. The past few years kind of dropped off, and I believe he finally came back, got out of that 2-year slump. Today, 36-47, 419 yards and 3 touchdowns. That is just great numbers to put up away at Philadelphia. By all means, they have a fairly good defense out there, and they have some great fans. I'm very surprised and very happy for Philip Rivers here, but Also, San Diego's rushing game surprised me. Ryan Matthews, 16 carries, 73 yards. Very impressive. Antonio Gates, another great game.
In this game, we had a total on offense of 1,050 yards. One stat that you can't help but look at for this one, the time of possession, just to show how fast Philadelphia plays. In a 60-minute game, 40 minutes and 17 seconds went to San Diego, 19 minutes and 43 seconds went to Philadelphia. I haven't seen that in a long, long time. Carl, do you think that had an effect on this game?
I think it's just the way Chip Kelly plays. As an Oregon fan, I'm completely used to it. The way he runs his offense, time of possession is a stat I really think is completely nullified when you start running these up-tempo offenses, because it really, time of possession doesn't show much when you can score touchdowns quickly. I was just, as you were saying, you were over the moon with DeAndre Hopkins. I was over the moon with the way Deshaun Jackson is proving that he really can be an elite NFL receiver, and he's not just a returner. He had 193 yards of receiving in this game. He really has impressed me. The way he has played has shown me that he can be an elite receiver in the NFL. Paired with that, with Wade Michaelvick threw the ball today, 428 yards. His completion percentage was a little low for me, 23 to 36, but he did not have a single interception today and did not lose any fumbles. So that's big for him.
Yeah, but clearly not big enough. Philadelphia lost this game, and I'll tell you why. Philadelphia didn't lose this game. San Diego won this game. If you want to talk about wide receivers that you're over the moon about, I don't know how we can't talk about Eddie Royal. In his first 2 games this season, he has a total of 5 receiving touchdowns. He caught 3 touchdowns today. Phillip Rivers, 36 for 47, 419 yards for 3 touchdowns. Royal, 7 receptions, 90 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Malcolm Floyd had 5 receptions, 102 yards. Antonio Gates, 8 receptions, 124 yards. Danny Woodhead, 8 receptions, 37 yards. There were 33 first downs for San Diego, and there were 33 points for San Diego, interestingly enough. The Chargers proved that they can play an offense. They actually can close out games. This game is worth so much more than just one win in the standings, because the biggest problem for San Diego for quite some time now is closing games out. Any Charger fan, I've got some friends who are Charger fans, and there's always the agony of thinking about what happened last year against the Ravens when Ray Rice was able to convert on that 4th and 29. It's time after time we've seen the Chargers just cannot close games out, even though they put themselves in perfect position. And here, they come into Philadelphia, they get 2 turnovers, they have 2 turnovers and don't force a single one, and they still come away with a win. They have 79 total plays, and what we learned last week was the more plays you run, the more chances you get to score, and the more likely you'll win. In week 1, the 7 of the top 8 teams in terms of plays ran won their game. If this receiving core continues to be flexible, the Chargers could actually be a dangerous team. That's another fantasy pickup for this week, man. Eddie Royal is proving that he can be a beast in fantasy leagues. So you got the Titans who are trying to prove themselves in the AFC, and you've got the Chargers. That brings us to our third debate of 4. Who is the better playoff contender, if there is one, of these 2 teams in the AFC? The Tennessee Titans or the San Diego Chargers?
That is really tough. I might just have to go with the Tennessee Titans because they're not in the same division as the Chiefs and the Broncos. But also it's a really tough one. I think in the end it's the Chargers just because their offense is so much more dominant. Phillip Rivers, he's been there a little bit more. Jake Walker's still a young QB, still hasn't really gotten to his prime, I think. But I'm going to have to go with the San Diego Chargers on this one.
All right. What about you, Carl?
I'm going to have to agree on this one. Sadly enough, these debates are not being very lively with all this agreement. But San Diego, one, they're in an easier division because as much as Kansas City is impressed, I don't think they're a playoff team. And other than that, they'll probably lose 2 to Denver. So that's where they hit. But then you look at Tennessee, and they're in a division with Houston and Indianapolis, 2 teams I believe will probably be in the playoffs. So, actually, you know what? They may not be playoff teams, but they're over 500 teams. Houston and Indianapolis will both end up over 500. I see Kansas City maybe making that mark, but San Diego's in a better place, and Phillip Rivers, yeah, as Ian pointed out, people forget what a great quarterback he is, because the Chargers have not been doing these monumental things, but Phillip Rivers is a very strong quarterback, and that team could be going places.
I am so happy I finally get to disagree with you guys over this. Over any debate, especially this one. We've been talking about clutch. That's been the theme for this show. The San Diego Chargers have proved to me, despite what we saw today, that if they have the lead, they can't hold on to it. Tennessee was playing against Houston. That's a team who has learned to be the best in the league when it comes to coming up in the clutch, unless it's the playoffs.
Hey, unless you're saying they're more clutch than, say, the Falcons with Matty Ice.
It is hardwired into a San Diego Chargers player's blood to screw something up when everything looks like it's going right. The Tennessee Titans, they've come so close so many times. They are a force to be reckoned with. Jake Locker is good enough. Chris Johnson's good enough. They have the balanced attack. If you give both these guys, grade them on a scale of 1 to 10, they're both 6s. That's balanced. That's a little above average, and that's enough. And I don't think San Diego has that because they can make mistakes so easily. So I'm actually going to take the Titans on that one. Moving right along, we have, it's getting late into the night, 10:43 p.m. here on the West Coast. We have 5 games left to cover and 2 more debates. We're going to try and get things moving along. Before we do, again, just big thank you to you guys. This is a big-time commitment, but I really appreciate it. Thank you a lot, both of you. Just want to let you know it means a lot to me.
No problem.
Thanks for having us.
Nothing like talking football. Does Arizona-Detroit count as football? Apparently it does. Now, last night Carl said that Oakland would score 25 points, and I bashed on him for a good 5 minutes on how on earth are you going to pick somebody to score 25 points. Well, wouldn't you know that the Arizona Cardinals, in a strange turn of events, scored 25 points today. A field goal, a touchdown, a field goal, a field goal, a field goal, and a touchdown with a failed 2-point conversion. 25-21, Arizona won. This was another game that I was incorrect on. I didn't see... the other 3 games I was wrong on were Miami, Indianapolis, San Diego, Philadelphia, and this one, Arizona, Detroit. I knew it would be close. I did not see this coming. What about you, Ian? Were you surprised by this one?
I'm actually not too surprised. I picked the Cardinals to actually pull this game out, but I think the reason they won, 1, it was at home, and 2, Larry Fitzgerald is on their team. The reason I say that is because whenever you see Larry Fitzgerald on that field, you know you'll have to at least double team him. You can't just put one cornerback on him. The same thing for the Detroit Lions with Calvin Johnson, but Carson Palmer just came out today, 248 yards, 39 attempts, 1 touchdown. It just showed me that he can be a quarterback to take his team to the playoffs.
Playoffs?
Yep.
For the Arizona Cardinals?
I'm not saying they will go to the playoffs, but I'm saying Carson Palmer has the ability. I don't think it will happen out there in the NFC West with the Seahawks and 49ers and Rams, may I also add. But if they were in another division, I think they make the playoffs.
Well, I have some words for you. Let me just gather my thoughts while I do that. Let's see what Carl has to say. Does this team have the ability to make the playoffs?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say no on that one, just one, their division is ridiculously difficult. Two, I'm sorry, your point on Larry Fitzgerald, he only had 2 receptions for 33 yards today. Carson Palmer had a worse day than Matthew Stafford did. Overall, when I look at this game, I kind of just see what I see is that this is not a very strong team. Also, I'm just reading these stats, and I'm really confused because Patrick Peterson, apparently he threw a ball for 17. He threw 1 for 1 for 17 yards. I'm not sure if that's actually
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
2 balls, but he also caught a ball for 17 yards.
How about it?
This is an odd event, but I'm just gonna. That's just a weird thing to point out. Other than that, I'm surprised by this. I had Detroit winning this. Big reason they probably lost. Reggie Bush with 9 carries, 25 yards, not near the production he had last week. And Calvin Johnson finally did come out, but yeah, Reggie Bush being under 100 yards total, only having 69 yards in total offense. That probably is the death stroke for this team. They need Reggie Bush to produce.
Reggie Bush left this game early as well with an injury. The Lions look like they finally might be able to produce. That'd be really devastating for this team if Bush is injured. If you look at this game on paper, you can't help but shake your head as to how on earth Arizona won this game. Palmer was 22 of 39, 248 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. But the number one thing that stands out here, the Cardinals went 1 of 11 today on third downs. And the one that they converted was a throw to the end zone that Lions cornerback Bill Bentley collided with receiver Andre Roberts in the end zone. A flag was thrown, it's pass interference, and Arizona converts. 1 for 11 on third downs, and you're able to come away with the win. This is clearly only because Bush was injured. I mean, Arizona was good, especially Ellington. I really liked Andre Ellington. This team that most people think. You have Carson Palmer, you have Rashard Mendenhall, but this is not a good team. A team that's good enough. There was no way they should have won this game. They're lucky that Bush was injured. Don't expect this to happen. There is absolutely no way this team is able to make the playoffs, even if they were in the AFC. But a team in the AFC that does think that they can make the playoffs, the Kansas City Chiefs hosted the Dallas Cowboys today, and it came away with the victory in a close one, 17-16. Carl, thoughts?
My thoughts are, I don't know how to say this, but the Chiefs are overrated. I'm shocked I can say the Chiefs are overrated because they're a team that last year was the worst team in the NFL, and now people are saying this is a team that can win 9-10 games.
Because they have Alex Smith now.
Ridiculous. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that anybody thinks this team will make the playoffs. I think there's no way.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Carl?
Wow.
Carl?
They make the playoffs.
Carl, this team's going to the AFC Championship game, if you ask me.
Championship game? Are you kidding me? At max, they're 8-8. I'm thinking more like 7-9.
You are insane. Ian, help me out here. Can you please explain to our viewers and Carl why Carl is off his rocker?
Well, I'm not even sure why he thinks this Alex Smith is a good QB. I'm not sure he's even good. I could consider him a great QB. He's mobile.
Great QB.
Alex Smith, smart QB who can run around in the pocket, can run if he has to, 8 carries, 57 yards, and he has enough targets and enough weapons around him to make him deadly. He has Dwayne Bowe out in the outfield. Sorry, my bad. Being baseball right now, out in the slot. And you have Jamal Charles back behind him. And Dexter McCluster, another just speedster that he could get to. I'm not sure this team, like Jake, I'm not sure they're an AFC Championship contender team, but they're definitely a playoff team. I'm not sure they can make a run to the AFC Championship, though.
Here's why I think they're going to make a run to the AFC Championship, because Denver has proved, or at least Peyton Manning has proved, that he cannot win in the playoffs. He's 9-11 in the playoffs. And the Houston Texans have proved that they cannot win in the playoffs. The Chiefs are going to go on a run. Alex Smith is going to be hungry.
You still have to go through Brady.
I understand. Through who?
You have to go through Brady. Tom Brady.
That's who they're going to lose to in the AFC Championship game, if you ask me. Carl, the reason why...
Wait, who do the Broncos lose to? Are you saying the Broncos lose to the Chiefs in the playoffs, or are you saying they lose to the Patriots in the playoffs?
We had the prediction show, I believe, episode 6, and I went through this. I think I ended up saying that... I think I had the Chiefs either had them beating the Bengals or the Broncos. I'm not sure.
I'm just gonna go through their schedule and just looking at this. They can beat Oakland, and they can beat them, but Oakland maybe good enough for a slip. Not sure if you go either way. They'll probably beat Cleveland. Then they can. I like San Diego too much to say they'll beat them. I mean, just their schedule is hard enough where I don't think they can get more than 7 wins. Maybe 8.
Carl, you said that they were the worst team in the NFL last year. Why? Because they had Matt Castle. Now they have Alex Smith. Now this is a well-rounded team.
Actually, right now, so not having issues with that. Just probably the three-way calling on the Skype system having some issues.
I agree. My Skype actually just shut down, but you know who's been shutting down lately? The Tampa Bay.
My takeaway, I have a couple takeaways.
First takeaway, probably just the way that the Buccaneers have figured out to lose. The first time, I mean, you lose that first game, it's like, okay, it's the first game. Okay, but this game, I finally thought they were going to pull it out. They had that big interception by Mason Foster in the fourth quarter, put them up, and then just kind of devastating when the New Orleans Saints won with when time expired. Drew Brees did not play well today. 2 interceptions, only 300. I mean, I'm not saying only 322 yards, but, he did not have a huge game. His completion percentage, 26 for 46. That's just not very good. But what really impressed me in this game was Doug Martin, and but the way that Tampa Bay finished this game just kind of unnerves me. They
right now. The problem is they continue to commit stupid penalties that ruins their games. Okay? 10 penalties for 118 yards today. That is despicable. They had more penalty yards than correction, I'm sorry. They had more penalty yards than pass yards today. No, they didn't. It was close. It was by about 3 yards. There was no discipline on this team, and the first finger I point here is Greg Schiano, and that brings us to our fourth and final debate. Fifth and final debate. I'm going to count the Chiefs as a debate. We'll save the Manning versus Manning conversation for another time. They can wait. They'll be around for a while. We can tell by the way they played today, or at least by the way Peyton played today. But here's the debate. You have to start playing a blame game at some point in Tampa Bay. Who do you point the finger at? Because we've seen a lot going on between Greg Schiano and Josh Freeman. Freeman, missing the team picture. Schiano saying that he wants to stick with Mike Lennon. It's a rocky relationship between these two. The entire Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization was set on Josh Freeman, except for Schiano, and that's why Freeman has to play for his life this season. This is a contract year, and they might just trade him, and that's been a huge rumor going around right now. So what do you think? Who's to blame, Schiano, Freeman, or someone else?
Well, we know where my blame is. My blame is on quarterback Josh Freeman. The way he played has just been atrocious. He only attempted 22 passes, but he only completed 9 of those. Under 10 completions in a game for a quarterback. He threw for 125 yards, touchdown, and an interception. A QB rating at 3. I mean, he was just pretty terrible. He's not a good NFL quarterback. If I'm Tampa Bay, this next year I look to draft a quarterback and hopefully start rebuilding. So next year they can be good. But as long as you have Josh Freeman as your quarterback, I think this is a lost cause.
I could not disagree with you more. Greg Schiano has sabotaged this team. This is a Bleacher Report article about the whole trade rumors with Freeman and the way Schiano's been treating him. And many Buccaneers fans agree. Let me just read the top comment from a guy named Patrick Lavin. Schiano has done nothing but push talented players out the door. Talib, Winslow, Bennett, Blount, etc. And he has no control over his team because no one respects the loser coach from I'm going to paraphrase and keep PG and say crappy college program. It's true. Schiano is completely dysfunctional, and he does not give Freeman any motivation to work hard for this team. There have been rumors going around that Schiano rigged the captain vote so that Josh Freeman would not be able to wear that C on his jersey. Schiano does not like Josh Freeman. Schiano has rocked the pirate ship of Buccaneers. it's a serious problem. Schiano has to go. I'm not saying Freeman's the best quarterback to have, but Schiano is certainly not making things better. Schiano is just trouble. Trouble after trouble after trouble. I've seen no reason to keep Greg Schiano in at Tampa Bay, and it's frustrating because at some point it feels like your head coach is holding this franchise hostage. And it'd be very frustrating to me if I was a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. And the New Orleans Saints, by the way, I thought I had faith in them. They were again disappointing today on offense. The defense was good, gave up only 14 points, but that's not very hard to do against Tampa Bay. Their offense needs to step it up. Drew Brees needs to step it up, or they can forget about playoff dreams here. They are 2-0, but they have not played like a 2-0 team. So I definitely think that Schiano has got to go here, and the Buccaneers Nation agrees with me.
All right, that's your opinion, but it's 11:02 now, so it's time to move on to our next game.
Well, yep, we have 2 games left. Thanks for hanging in there, Carl. Appreciate it, really do. Peyton, Eli, Manning Bowl 3, Broncos against the Giants, and Denver crushed them 41-23. Another offensive attack from Denver. What do you think of this one?
Once again, Peyton had a great game in this. 30 for 43, 307 yards, and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. You compare that to Eli. Well, he had more passing yards, 362 this game. He had only he had 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions. Those 4 interceptions, they may not have been the difference, but they were huge. A huge reason that this team lost this game. You look, and to the other side, Manning just had a much better game overall. You look in, Denver had a very good rushing attack from Moreno, and then you have Eric Decker and Demaryius Thomas, and really receiving by committee on this team. But it was just completely goes back to 4 interceptions and the way that turnovers really do decide games.
Denver's offense is looking unstoppable, and this time they were able to open it up with the run game. No Sean Marino was impressive today. I told you to pick him up in fantasy last night. If you did, you can thank me later, because Marino has 22 points in fantasy today, I believe. He got into the end zone twice, had 90 yards on the ground. If Denver can run the ball the way they're passing the ball, oh my God, that is a scary, scary thought. To go up against this Broncos offense, it'll keep any defense's hands full. Last game, I know Ian would want to be here with us for this one. Lightning in Seattle. It's the reason we started the show late. It's the reason he's not here. It's the reason the Niners-Seahawks game started late. A lot of people went with San Francisco. I said to pick Seattle. Seattle came through for me. Big time. Forcing 5 turnovers, including 3 picks from Colin Kaepernick. It looks like Colin Kaepernick is going to be without an eyebrow for a while. Final score 29-3 in favor of Seattle. Marshawn Lynch got into the end zone 3 times, 2 by ground, 1 by air. What do you think of this one, Carl?
Kind of disappointed by the 49ers, especially by their undisciplined play. They had a 12 penalty for 121 yards. That's just a huge nick. They held the Seahawks under 300 yards on offense, but, they gave up 4 first downs by penalties, including a couple of key ones, and just the first half they were in it. It was 2-0 after, again, those first 2 points were on a penalty, because they had a safety, and the holding call in the end zone, and you look at 5-0 and then 12-0, but it was only 3-12 at half. If they had a good halftime conversation, and Jim Harlow, we pumped them up, they probably could have come back. But just the way, especially that first drive, and Marshawn Lynch just kept coming at them, and this 49ers team just proved that maybe they need more work before they can repeat as a Super Bowl team. And Seattle just looked really impressive. Marshawn Lynch, 98 yards, 2 touchdowns, and both quarterbacks were extremely unimpressive. Russell Wilson had 142 yards, 8-17. Kaepernick 13 for 28, 127 yards, 3.
Tough to beat Seattle at home. It was loud there. Even with the lightning, even with the bad conditions, man, there is really a 12th man up in Seattle. And we have one last game to predict. We promised the viewers last night that me and Carl would be making Monday night predictions. Thank you for sticking it out here so long. We are now at the 75-minute mark. Last game. Carl, Monday Night Football. The Bengals will be hosting the Steelers. Who?
People listening live to this, I want to say thank you for listening, and yeah, but now I'll actually go on to the game. Cincinnati Bengals should have no issue whatsoever beating this Pittsburgh Steelers team, who I was extremely unimpressed with in week 1. You look at the Bengals, they had a very, very tough loss playing the Chicago Bears, but Andy Dalton, I think, is a better quarterback than most people say he is, and Ben Roethlisberger is getting to the point where he's just overrated for any other time. Pittsburgh is looked at as a good team only because they were a good team in the past, and they are not a good team in the present. I just cannot say how much I think the Bengals are going to win this game.
I echo your thoughts exactly. Cincy 27, Pittsburgh 16. The Steelers are past their prime. The Bengals are entering their prime. AJ Green's going to have another huge game. Now, and it is 11:08 p.m. on the West Coast. I mean, considering that some of you could even be on the East Coast, very, very early Monday morning or late. To listen and tell everybody else that you're listening. Yeah. So really, really appreciate it. It means a lot. And speaking of appreciation, I have to give a huge shout out to Carl Moglen, host of College Football on Air. It's a great show. You should check it out. He's a great guy. That's why he's been here not once, but 2 nights in a row each night. So thank you so much, Carl. You got any last words?
Just as I always say, follow me on Twitter at Carl_PM. It's Carl with a K.
Alright, we are at the 79th minute of Rookies Roundup, our 8th episode. Our first rapid reaction special, it went great. For four guys that really shined, you've got the you've got the tight end. Well, of course, there's a lot of tight ends in the NFL. What am I saying? I'm pulling it up. I'm sorry. I had this list. I told you the internet's a little weird right now, but it is in here somewhere. The defense that crushed you was Seattle. Although you probably expected that. No. That was Oakland, giving up just 9 points. The Oakland Raiders defense came through. And for kickers, it was Matt Prater. So now all that's left now is a wide receiver, and Pierre Garçon is the other wide receiver, and the and then everyone will think you're a genius. I simply vote. I really appreciate this. A Jacksonville TV station. You see, CBS was broadcasting multiple games at the afternoon hour. Of course, the big game was the Manning Bowl, number 3, Broncos vs. Giants. That's the game everybody wanted to see. The problem is the NFL demands that certain local stations broadcast the local teams. So the Jaguars were playing the Raiders. The Jaguars local station, Jacksonville local station, had to play this game, and they realized that most people wouldn't want to do it. As the show was going on, the TV station tweeted online and actually read across the TV saying, quote, in accordance with NFL policy, WKN because it's fun for people to listen. People do listen. We have nearly 40,000 total plays. Hopefully we can rack them up here. We are heading to, if we have 10 live viewers, that means we passed the 700 viewer mark for this show, which is great, but I know we can do a lot more over the days. Share it with your friends on Facebook, talk about Rookies Roundup, or give a shout out to National Sports, Twitter at all caps National Sports 1, and for the hipsters, hashtag no filter at National_Sports if you want to check us out on Instagram. And that is it. 8 episodes of Rookies Roundup, our first ever rapid reaction special. Thank you so much for tuning in, especially if you're listening live, because right now it is 11:16 p.m. We had some technical difficulties. To be honest, I was coming into the night and I was not feeling very well. It's always a lot of fun. So, yeah. And it's all worth it for everybody that listens. Really appreciate it for all of you to listen. Tell your friends. Tell your neighbors. Tell anybody. Tell your dog if he can get listeners. I don't know. Just tell somebody. Except for Greg Schiano. I don't want him getting mad at me and sending his players to tackle at me for absolutely no reason. Yeah, throwback to that Neil play in New York. He's got to go. But as Greg Schiano has to go, so do we. 45 seconds later, saying good night from LA and have a good rest of the week. We will see you next week. Oh, one more thing. We got some exciting news. Every year I take a trip to Green Bay, see a Packer game. Now that I'm doing this show, maybe, just maybe, if we get internet access at the hotel we're staying at, in 3 weeks from now, Rookies Roundup will be going live from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Hopefully. Mark it on your calendars. But don't just listen to us in Green Bay. Listen to us when we're in LA. Listen to all our episodes. Tell everybody. I've definitely made sure that I've not sold this show short. And with that, I'm going to say goodnight. Have a great week. Hopefully we'll see you next week. And let everybody you know, fire Schiano. Go Pack Go. We're out.
Live from Los Angeles, we thank you for listening to another presentation of the National Sports Radio Station on Spreaker.com.